Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 392. The Tale of 4 Fantasy Adventure Games.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com.
Is that a question?
Do you want it to be?
That kind of sounded like a question.
Go visit GameToppersLLC.com. This is a requirement. If you haven't seen the Game Toppers that we tote around with us, you must see them. If you can't see them for yourself, go see them on the internet. GameToppersLLC.com. So many great things to check out and to purchase. Game Toppers, mats for your Game Toppers, sleeves for your Game Toppers, legs for your Game Toppers, cup holders, and other accessories. Lots of awesome stuff worth a visit. GameToppersLLC.com.
We are your hosts of Meeple Nation. I am Logan Howard.
I am Andy Holliday. I'm Nathan Howard.
And I'm Dave Holliday.
Visit the webpage. It's awesome. There's things to do, like clicking on things. There's blogs, pictures to see. If you ever wondered what Dave actually looks like, you can see a picture of him. It's great.
We got some blogs up there. We have a couple of new guest bloggers that we're going to hopefully be adding soon. We'll look forward to their content as well.
This week we are discussing fantasy games, 4 fantasy games to be specific. We've talked about quite a few already this month, so each of us has picked an individual game to speak about.
Last week we discussed a bunch of games that have the fantasy theme, and it was pretty awesome. It was kind of crazy how many games, especially the games that we like, are fantasy-based.
I think it's because oftentimes the fantasy goes in line with story and or campaign.
I think
Totally.
you're absolutely right, Logan.
Absolutely. We have narrowed it down to 4, and the one that I am going to discuss is Ascension deck building game. I'm not going to have a whole lot to talk about.
What?
Because it is so similar to a lot of the other deck building games that we all know and love so much. It doesn't really require a whole lot of description as far as that goes. So this one is obviously, it's fantasy based. There are a few differences, of course. Just like with any good deck builder, you start with a hand of 10 cards. But before I get there, Ascension is a game for 1 to 4 players. It says that it's best with 2. I kind of like it with the full complement, 4 players.
I've never played it with 2 players.
Designed by John Fiorillo, Justin Gary, and Brian M. Kibler. The interesting thing about the game designers here, these are Magic the Gathering Pro Tour champions. A lot of their design revolved around that theme. Deck building game, players spend runes to acquire more powerful cards for their deck. Dynamic play experience, players have to react and adjust their strategy accordingly. Each player starts with a small deck of cards, 10 cards, just like any good deck builder, and uses those cards to acquire more and better cards for the deck. Goal of earning the most honor points by gaining cards and defeating monsters. As I said, you're spending runes to purchase cards from the center row.
So that's kind of what you're saying is similar to most deck builders.
Mechanics all the same, right?
I would say it's more similar to games like Legendary Marvel deck building game. Any of those games, you have your buy power and your fight power. Those 2 cards are going to come up in the market row. In Ascension, it's just 1 common row.
Right.
And so you have that option to either buy cards or fight cards in that row.
That row, it's just 6 cards, basically, that are going to be face up there in that row. There's the common cards that are always available. There's the cultist that's always available to attack, 30 mystics and 29 heavy infantry.
So the mystics will give you runes to spend, and the infantry will give you
fight power. Now, in this game, you're gaining honor. That's the victory point in this game. One thing I like about this game, in that center row of cards, you're going to have all 3 card types show up. You're going to have monsters show up that you can defeat. You're going to have heroes, and you have constructs. Constructs are a little unique to this game. Construct, a card that once you play the construct into your play area, it remains there. It doesn't go back into your discard pile and then into your deck to be drawn again later. Typical in most of these deck builder games. I like that uniqueness of those constructs. Every turn you have that construct in play, you continue to benefit from its ability. Card elements, you're going to have, obviously, the cost in runes, the honor points, and the action that gives you runes to spend or fight power or both. A lot of them will have specific actions, like some of the constructs, for example. Once you have this construct in play, whenever you purchase a new construct, you can put it immediately into play instead of into your discard and then drawing it to play it for the first time. For the most part, gameplay is very similar. Draw up your 5 cards, play everything, or discard it all. So you're going to have no cards at the end of your play phase, and then you'll draw back up after that. You purchase and everything else. Whoever has the most honor at the end of the game is going to win. I used to play this a long time ago. This game came out in 2010. We never really played this one a whole lot, at least not while I was around, which always kind of bothered me, actually. I really liked it. We played it a couple of times, and I really liked it. I remember several times suggesting it, and this might have been when we were playing Thunderstone all the time, too.
You're probably right.
And that's why we didn't play it. Maybe that's part of the reason that I didn't like Thunderstone so much either, because I liked this one, and I really wanted to play this one some more. Everybody else wanted to play Thunderstone at the time. I mentioned it to Dennis, who, for whatever reason, was not a big fan of this game. It was a game that I suggested, and they're like, I don't really like it that much. And I don't know why. To me, it always seemed like they did a good job with the deck building. They did a good job with the monsters. To me, it just always seemed like a very solid, this point in my life, deck builders were awesome to me. Still are.
My oldest daughter, Ashley, she really liked this game. First playing some of these more advanced games, she liked this one. Both my daughters really liked Dominion, but Ashley really liked Ascension more than Dominion. Tyrants of the Underdark was another one that she really liked. Kind of a similar doing that deck building. Tyrants of the Underdark is a little bit different. She always really liked Ascension. And I really liked the gameplay of Ascension. Using the one common row. First, you're trying to just buy cards. You're trying to pick up cards like the Mystics, anything that's going to give you more runes, give you more buying power. And then all of a sudden, the market row is filled with monsters. Very big disadvantage because if you didn't pick up any heroes or pick up any cards that had battle power on them, then all of a sudden you're wasting turns trying to pick up heavy infantry. So you have enough fight power to clear a spot or two and hope that something is going to come out, provide you opportunity to buy. I do like that Ascension kind of balances that out so that you can't just always have something to buy. You have to worry about something to fight. And you run into a little bit of that with Clank as well. That market row can be cluttered with villains and monsters as well. Something about Ascension, I really kind of enjoyed that balance.
I was going to say the same thing about Clank. If you've played Clank and you like the market, how the market works, that market row that can be totally filled with stuff to buy or totally filled with monsters, and if you don't have some sort of balance, you can be like, oh, can't do anything this turn. This market row, if you want to call it that, very, very similar to Clank as that goes.
It's been a long time since I've played Ascension, but when you're comparing that to the way the market works in Clank, so with Clank, I very rarely go for heavy combat cards, and I've never really had an issue not being able to purchase something.
Yeah.
Over 10 years since I've played Ascension, does there tend to be more monster cards in the market than you would find typically in Clank?
I think so. I think there's more monsters in the draw deck than there are monsters in the Clank draw deck. I think you have a little bit better ratio that way. There's always the opportunity to buy Mystics and heavy infantry, just like in Clank you have the Explorer and the Soldier. You have that opportunity to buy those cards if needed. You're never going to have a turn where you can't buy anything, but
right.
You might have turns where you're like, do I want to clutter my deck with that card?
Do I really want to, is the question.
Or do I just not buy anything and wait for someone to clear these monsters off?
Exactly,
Right.
yeah. So I think you run into a little bit of that with Ascension as well. As far as Ascension goes, there's several expansions out there, so there's quite a bit of variety that increases the replayability.
That was one of the reasons that I was upset to not play it as much, I guess, because I wanted to see all that content. Got a little taste, and it was something that I really liked. I knew there was much more, and I wanted to explore it more. I wanted to try out different combos.
But isn't that the enemy of most games that have lots of content, is time? We just don't have enough time to go through it all.
Definitely seems like that now, more than it did then.
Yeah, definitely more so now. There's a lot more games out. There are a lot more games out now.
Yeah.
Well, I was just doing some research just today, and I was pulling up graphs on how many new board games came out last year compared to the years before. Even just in the last 5 years, over 3,000, going up and up. Last year, 4,500 games
Oh my
came out.
word.
That's
Wow.
even with the pandemic, dealing with all the issues. 10 years ago, that wasn't as much of an issue. Obviously, we're not going to be ever exposed to 4,000 new board games in a year.
It's impossible to stay up with all those games. As the hobby grows, we see more companies start out, which I think is great. There's a whole cornucopia of games and game companies that are out there. Provide us with options. Because not every game is made for every person, and not every person is going to like every game.
That is very true.
Check it out. It's a good game. It's one that we've not played as much as I would have liked. It was definitely worth it.
I don't know if you're going to be able to find it. I don't know if it's still in print. If you can find it, I would suggest it. I enjoyed the game.
Alright, my fantasy adventure I will be taking us on is The Resistance Avalon. It's a hit and roll game, 5 to 10 players, although they say it's best 7 to 8. Actually, I get really confused about these a lot of times. How many times have they played with a certain amount? Is it just averages, or is it people saying no?
It's all users are putting that information.
I'm
so-
guessing that, remember when we played The
The
Thing, we definitely felt strongly that this is not a game for 4 players, right?
Yeah.
Maybe somebody really felt that way.
The game plays roughly around 30 minutes. If you've ever played The Resistance, which we've talked about, and in fact they have an entire episode about The Resistance in our archives of Meeple Nation, that is from many moons ago. I want to say that was like 2015 that they talked about it. But Avalon, in my opinion, makes the Resistance game better. Not only does it take it from the futuristic Resistance member versus the government, it's good versus evil, and it's Merlin and Arthur's court. You're either an agent of evil or you're a member of the court trying to do good. Different twist that they put on it, I think, makes Resistance so much better. One of the big things that they added is there are different characters, so even if you're just a regular good guy, they have different roles, so you're not stuck into just being the good, bad. I think that's what a lot of the regular game gets stuck. If you're a good person, you can only play the game a certain way, and if you're a bad person, well, I can lie. Have individual roles. We played it actually at SaltCon end of summer, but we played it a few times with our friend Will and a few other people, and we had a good time. I really liked it. It is one that you can get into very heated arguments about logic. Someone's like, no, that is not the right way you do something. If you wanted to be non-suspicious, you had to make this choice. 20 minutes later, I don't even care anymore. Can you just decide with this team or not? Like, let's move on.
Yeah, the last time
That's
we
funny
played,
because that seems like that was very much what happened.
say that last game was it was very much that.
I mean, all except for Dennis. Dennis really enjoyed it.
Almost as much as Logan enjoys Dominion 15 times in a row.
It's a really good game. If you like hit and roll games, it's one to pick up. One thing that I did find was really interesting when we were putting together the show notes, under award and honors, we hardly ever talk about this besides saying that it's got a bunch of awards. Well, it's an older game. It's gotten awards in 2013, but just this year it got an award in Bulgaria. Game of the Year. It was nominated. It's getting new life. It's out there. It's still getting played. I think that's kind of interesting. The awards all being stacked to when the game first comes out, that this game has been around quite a bit, that it's getting use and people are experiencing and enjoying it more.
So is it just barely releasing into these other countries? Because I notice it has a 2018 award as well. That makes me curious as to whether it's barely getting released into these other areas and gaining awards from these other countries.
That is a very real possibility.
Which is a credit to the game, considering the fact that it's still...
That they're bothering
Yeah,
to do that with.
Yeah.
Like you said, this is a hidden roll game. Y'all know me. Hidden roll is not my cup of tea. However, I actually liked this one much more than I thought I would. I still don't know where I would place it. It was much better than I thought it was going to be. And maybe it was because I was enjoying watching Dennis. No, I wasn't. It was good. I liked it. I don't know what it was about it that I liked different than my typical experience with hidden roll games, but
I remember playing Avalon years and years ago at a NUG event that I actually went to, because I've only been to like 2. We played it there. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. That edition, at the end, bad guys, if they got caught, they had to try to pick who Merlin was. Kind of like the last, maybe we'll win if we figure out who the seer Merlin was. And I think it's like what you were saying, Andy. I think they do have a brand new edition that Will, our friend, bought. New roll cards. Personally, I think that's what pushes it up over the top. There's more variety to it. As much as I like playing Werewolf, it always sucks when you're playing Werewolf and you're just a plain old villager. No
Right.
special abilities. I think that appeals to a lot of people, is that you play games like this and you still have a special ability even if you're just a regular good guy.
So does this game have to have someone running the game that's not an active player, or...
No, which actually I've thought about this before. What I'm about to say is it has like a heads up 7-up type thing. It has a little script. Everyone put your heads down. All the bad guys put their heads up. They acknowledge each other. Then they put their heads down. One other role knows who the bad guys are. You just run through it. You can do that without looking. I say that, and I actually don't remember how to play heads up 7-up, but I just remember referring to it.
Maybe we should do an episode.
Oh, heads up 7-up? I was actually just thinking about that the other day when I was saying something like that to somebody else. I was like, I remember playing this in elementary, but I just don't get it.
When we played it at End of Summer, Will was playing the game. He was the moderator as well.
One of the first times that we played, you weren't playing with us. Nathan was playing another game at the table next door, so we just had him come over for a minute and walk us through it. Somebody that doesn't necessarily want to play that they can fulfill that role, they
Right.
can. You can self-moderate in the game, which I think is fantastic.
Will brought Quest, Avalon Big Box. So it's the same game, but it has these additional rules that you talked about. Dave talking about Will being the moderator, which isn't necessarily a moderator like we think of with Werewolf. You're going through the role, activating people exactly like you said, Logan. But Quest, Avalon Big Box Edition, which is a brand new release in 2021, evolves that game, takes that great game that was Resistance, that Avalon was a re-implementation of Resistance, and then this Quest Avalon Big Box Edition is a re-implementation of that. Any of those editions, Resistance, Avalon, or this Quest, all going to have similar aspects in the game. However, I really think this Quest has been a great evolution of the game. It does provide more content, it provides more variability, and it provides a chance for the players, if they get outed, still have a chance to figure out who Merlin is. And if they figure out who Merlin is, then they win. You have that information as somebody on the non-bad guy side, but they have limited knowledge of the other side. They need to use that information, but they need to use it covertly. You don't want to be too overt about your knowledge.
Right. And me not knowing the game and not understanding the game, and Will understanding it very well, it was kind of funny because I knew who Will was. I knew he was a good guy. And I kept trying to point that out. Look, Will's a good guy. We know this. And Will kept playing it off like he wasn't a good guy because he was really not wanting...
All the attention?
Well, not just all the attention. He didn't want
everybody knowing he was Merlin.
Yeah, that was it. I'm sure the entire time he's like, oh my gosh, Dave, shut up.
I do have to say, hit and roll games like this, you're not playing it right unless you're playing it loud and contentious. Between this or at Hug a MeepleCon or edition of Salem, like
that was such a great game.
These types of games, they're so much better when you really get into them and you really get mad and you really dig in. Instead of just being like super passive and someone's like, you're the traitor, and you're like, yeah, okay.
You like playing this game with Nathan Tenney then. Because he gets into it. He will go all out, do whatever it takes to make you think it's not him.
This last time we played Avalon, it pushed my limits and my patience with what I'm just saying go all in, because it was like literally, we need to vote on this team to move on. We just can't agree. And it's like, okay, let's just make a choice. Are we going to have the vote or not? Move on.
So what you're saying is it's really not a 30-minute playtime.
No, not with us.
That night it wasn't. That's
No.
for sure.
So didn't help that it was at the end of SaltCon. After we've been up for a long time, after we've been playing games all day, people would say things to stop paying attention for a while. You know, like the end of cons.
Your eyes glaze over. Drool starts to come out the corner of your mouth. And
Or like 9:30 for Logan.
Except I was up a long time those days. Like, I pushed the limits. I was like a young man in, 23s.
In his 23s?
How
How
many
many different
23s do you
divisions
got?
are there in the 23s?
It's my first 23, then my second 23.
Actually, what's funny is when people ask me how old I am, the answer is generally 23 and has been for a long time. So I've been having 23s for a long time. So I'm with you.
Avalon, great game. You should pick it up. Widely available. Unlike Ascension, because, I pick games that people can actually play.
They can actually play this too, but they might actually be able to buy yours.
My favorite type of games are dungeon crawlers. And then you add fantasy theme to that, and that is absolutely my cup of tea. So I'm going to talk about Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. This is a 1 to 5 player game, which having a dungeon crawler that is a 5 player count is awesome, because usually you max out at 4.
And it's not a 1 versus 4. It's a 5-player cooperative game.
It is a 5-player cooperative game. Best with 2. I have never played it with 2 people.
Doug did say that he played the entire campaign with just him and Emberly and had a fantastic time. So that's one that I'm like, maybe it is.
Yeah, for sure.
I played it solo 10 times last year. And I enjoyed it. Played it solo while controlling 4 characters.
So that's not really playing solo.
Yeah, I was controlling the 4 players. It went well. I still really enjoyed it.
We just barely started a campaign in this, and it has been a ton of fun.
We've started 2 campaigns.
That's true.
This.
We've started 2 campaigns. You're going to embark on your own adventures in J.R.R. Tolkien's iconic world of the Lord of the Rings. Journeys in Middle-earth, a fully cooperative, app-supported board game. For 1 to 5 players, you'll battle villainous foes, make courageous choices, and strike a blow against the evil that threatens the land. All as part of a thrilling campaign that leads you across the storied hills and dales of Middle-earth. Each individual game of Journeys in Middle-earth is a single adventure in a larger campaign. You'll explore the vast, dramatic landscapes of Middle-earth using your skills to survive the challenges that you encounter on these perilous quests. And as you and your fellow heroes explore the wilderness and battle the dark forces arrayed against you, the game's companion app guides you to reveal the looming forests, the quiet clearings, and the ancient halls of Middle-earth, while also controlling the enemies you encounter. Whether you're venturing into the world on your own or with close companions by your side, you can write your own legend in the history of Middle-earth. So one thing that I have noticed about this, which I really like, if you played the same adventure twice, it changes the map completely.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is great. It really adds to the replayability of it. Fantastic job on that. I thought they really did a nice job on the app.
I think the app is just purely fantastic in general.
Yeah, I agree. It'll build the map out for you, and one of the things you can do is you can explore. There's an explore token on there. You can gain that exploration token, which will flip over and be an inspiration for you that you can spend to fuel cards, to turn certain cards into successes, fuel abilities, and such. Each player is going to be playing a unique character in J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth. Typically going to be people that you know from the books.
There's a few that you know from the books. Few, I don't know if they're new characters or if they're from the errata.
I agree with you. Most of them are from the books, but there are a few I didn't recognize. And they could be from the Silmarillion. And each of those characters is going to have an asymmetric ability, and then you get to pick a class. Now, each of those characters has a preferred class that it recommends you use, but you don't have to stick with that. You can pick something else. And then you'll get the deck of cards for that class, and the cards that are unique to that character in your starting cards. To start out with, you don't have all the cards in your deck. I love how they did the experience on this, because you're not spending experience to add more cards to your deck, because there's a deck building aspect to this. Until you hit a threshold. Right?
That's upgrading. Well, that's one of my favorite things.
Sorry, I apologize. That's not for the actual putting cards in your deck. That's for upgrades.
Experience, you do add cards in, but it's a very minute part of it, because you're only adding a few cards.
And you don't have a ton of cards to add. And you get to see all the cards that you have the opportunity to gain throughout the game. On each of your items, you're going to have a little number at the top, which is the threshold to upgrade that item to its upgraded version. You don't have to actually spend the XP or the lore or whatever it is that you have to flip that card. You actually just have to hit a threshold, and then it automatically upgrades.
I really like that in campaign games, where some characters are just built to be more effective, get more experience. Games like this, they kind of balance that out. Well, it doesn't matter that Aragorn killed all the monsters. We got this much lore. Now everybody's equipment levels up. I like that they're able to spread that around the table instead of Aragorn killed all the monsters and now he's level 12 and we're all stuck on level 3.
A lot of dungeon crawler games, you want to make the characters unique and kind of have the characters fill different niches in the group, but you can run into that issue where maybe you have one person, we ran into this in Gloomhaven, you have one person that's really good at looting and they end up with all the money. You don't share the coins, so that one person ends up with a ton of the gold, and nobody else does. Because that's what that character's built around.
Big Trouble in Little China. Love that game. That's one of the biggest downsides to me. Certain characters are geared towards getting through those challenges and those combats, and they end up higher level, and they end up so much more effective. Get towards the end of the game, you just can't do the same type of things.
Like you said, Logan, I think they did a good job balancing tactics you would use with each of the characters with each other, so that they can actually work together and not be fighting for, oh, I need to get this. It feels more cohesive as a team co-op game rather than trying to run and get the treasure before anybody else, do whatever else before anybody else can. Overall, I love it. I think it's fun. I think the one thing I like more about other dungeon crawlers than Journeys in Middle-earth, just the tiles, because it's just like wilderness, you're outside, and for dungeon crawl, I like it just, you're in a dungeon, and having that feel to it.
There's a
But
couple
it's
of times you
different,
go into
right?
mine, times you go into caves. It's kind of like a
Right,
dungeon crawl.
yeah. Well, there's a dungeon crawl aspect to it, right? Where you actually have, they're not little 1 inch by 1 inch spaces. They're areas that you're like, we explored a house, and I like those missions more than the ones where you're out in the wilderness exploring tiles. I like both, but I think I had more fun with that.
I felt the same way as far as that goes. The area, it's areas on the main map. I kind of like more defined spaces that way too.
A little more interesting. I know we've said this in the past, but it's a little more thematic. I tend to dive into the game and get into the game. The imagination has that little bit of a kickstart with games that actually have more detail, a little more immersive when you're on a map that has those fine details. Whereas in a map that's just, you're in a wilderness area, there's some rocks here, there's some ruins here, or whatever, but there's not a lot of detail. I tend to like the stuff that has a little more detail.
They do it a little bit more vague. What you mentioned at the first of the game is that each time you go through, that map's going to be a little bit different. They can expand and provide different scenarios or different instances using the same terrain.
Right, yeah, and that totally makes sense. I don't have too many games under our belt so far, but I have really enjoyed it. That is Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. And they're coming out with a new expansion this month.
Hopefully I am not correct in this, but I've heard that it is the last expansion for it.
Bummer.
So hopefully it is not.
For all you naysayers saying nay out there, Ascension is available on Amazon. It's there, and it's reasonable.
What's reasonable?
Depending on the set, $40 to $60.
The final game we're going to talk about, we're going to travel back in time to 2005. Dave, while you're on Amazon, see if you can find this game on there. I bet
There's
you
none
can.
on Amazon, but you can find it on eBay for about $35.
There you go.
Wow, really?
And this game is Beowulf the Legend. Beowulf the Legend is a 2 to 5 player game, plays in about 60 minutes, and I didn't realize this, but it's also designed by Rainier Knizia. I've enjoyed several of his games. Fascinating legend of the great hero Beowulf. The story is told in one of the oldest works of English literature. The game relives the legend, how the Gittish warrior Beowulf came to the aid of the Danish king amongst the fearsome monsters Grendel, how he returns to his home in Geatland to become king, and how Beowulf meets his end when fighting the terrible dragon. Beowulf, the legend, invites you to accompany the mighty hero as one of his brave comrades. So no one's playing as Beowulf. You're battling and traveling with Beowulf as he goes through these adventures. You hope to become the most revered warrior and succeed Beowulf as king. Only the strongest will prevail. The game consists of a series of actions, an L-shaped board. You're going to follow this path that Beowulf takes his adventure on. Players are going to place bids in certain action sections. They're going to have cards representing skills that are needed in combats and episodes. You have major episodes and minor episodes. Depending on what kind of cards that you have in your hand will determine how well you do in your fighting and cunning in an attempt to earn rewards, earn points, earn powerful cards, and avoid injuries or other penalties. As I mentioned, the game is played following this path, riding along with Beowulf. Each space is a different kind of trial. So some of these trials are risks, and what happens in these risk locations is you're just going to draw the top 2 cards of the draw deck, and hopefully cards that you draw will match one of the 2 symbols that are in this location. If they match that symbol, you get to add it to your hand. If they don't, then you take a scratch. And if you get so many scratches, then it becomes a wound. If you have so many wounds, they become worth negative points at the end. And then there are 2 types of episodes, and the minor episodes will allow each player to reveal cards from their hands. They reveal matching cards, and then they can gain a reward. Otherwise, they have a major encounter. And there's 2 types of major encounters. There's one where players are going to take cards from their hand and everybody's going to put cards down, keep that number of cards secret, and then everybody's going to reveal them at the same time. And then whomever has the most of the matching symbols gets to take their choice of the rewards that are at that major encounter. Then there is the clockwise major episode. These are combats. With each of these episodes, there's a risk. You can draw 2 cards. And hopefully one of those symbols will match And if one of those symbols match, you remain in the... Otherwise, if they don't match, you take that scratch and you're out. In these clockwise ones, the start player is going to place a number of symbols down. Then the next player is going to have to exceed that number. Then you have to keep adding on to that as you go around the table until players either bow out or simply don't have the cards to add. Some of these would be Grendel's attack, the Sea Hag attack, the hunting of the Sea Hag, encountering the Sea Hag. The Sea Hag happens a lot. All the way through until you get to the end where you're going to fight the dragon. The game is actually fairly simple to play. I enjoy the story of it. It follows that story of Beowulf. Very well done. And it does play pretty close to that 60 minutes, I feel. Even with 5 players, I think it still plays pretty close to that 60 minutes. I haven't had any experiences where it's been slowed down.
I don't remember it being slow or super long.
And Logan, you haven't played it for a long time, right?
It's been years. I agree with you. I don't remember it taking a particularly long time. Pretty consistent. Not quick, but not super long.
It's one that you haven't played, right, Andy?
I have not played it.
So we need to get it to the table and maybe put it on my 10x1 for next year. Get you to experience that. I really like the game. I think it's well done.
This was a game that I was always a little disappointed when it came out. There would be other games that I would totally prefer to play, and we played it quite a bit. But I think it was partially because of the fact that time was consistent. We knew it wasn't going to take that long. Could do it and get another game in still.
Play this while somebody else is finishing their game.
I really do want to play it again, though. I was always kind of disappointed, but now that I've matured a lot more, I'll see if my opinion is any different.
So I remember looking at this game so many times in the game store, perusing, looking for a new game to add to my collection. Honestly, I think what turned me off is it seemed just so linear. The way the board is, the path you're on, and it just seemed linear. And not knowing anything else about the game, that's what turned me off of it.
It is very linear.
So it would be fun to play to try it out, because that's the biggest reason why I never bought it.
I think you'll actually probably enjoy it when we play it. We'll have to follow up and see how you like it.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's Beowulf the Legend. Like Logan mentioned, it's available on eBay for about $35. Otherwise, probably...
I only saw one listing, so get on it.
There you go. Otherwise, pretty inaccessible, but if you do find it, I would suggest considering it.
There you have it. 4 fantasy adventures. Hope you've enjoyed each of these adventures.
Until next time,
we'll see you choosing your own adventure.
And you shall have my axe.
And my bow.
Wow. Seen Andy just waving his imaginary hair when he's saying that too.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter, @MeepleNation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product. There's so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braden Detergent for our music.
tale of 4 adventure games. Did I say that right? I wasn't looking at it.
Tales of 4 Fantasy Adventures with this here. Meeple Nation Podcast is brought to you by... Why are you looking at me like that, Logan?
Why are you saying it so weird? I saw it in your face before you even started. Was like,
I look at Logan's face and he was just like this kid going,
Kurt.
Okay, Meeple Nate.
Meeple's night.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation.
Way to fade in.
Yes, you were fading on. You
gotta
were
start
fading
out
on
loud,
instead of
though.
fading off. That was fantastic.